villages, but also a couple of medical doctors. So they were able to talk authoritatively on the health hazards on the children. So within 2 weeks, all those heaps and things were removed. So people could see that their organization and their protest is getting them somewhere. Then when there was a massive fish kill, which really helped galvanize support from a broad spectrum of people, then the fishermen asked for compensation, because Pollution Control Board for the first time had come down in time, taken the samples and held the factory guilty and responsible for the heavy pollution that caused the fish kill.
The struggle now took another turn. SPS activists decided to boycott the use of clothes made from synthetic fiber. This fiber leads to the cutting down of trees and upsets the balance of our livelihood. So we must not use this cloth, they reasoned. Having made this brave decision, many villagers collected a whole lot of clothes made from rayon or polyester and made a huge bonfire of the lot. I believe this was a historic moment. It was a rousing replay of the crusading agitation launched during the struggle for Indian independence.
We feel that there is a substantive improvement in the quality of waters in the Tungabhadra river, because all these series of actions coupled with public interest litigation in the High Court of Karnataka have put enough pressure on the factory to treat effectively their affluents. So that has made a big difference in the quality of the river. And one major indicator of it is there used to be fish kills very often earlier. Like 1984 we had a fish kill, 86, 88, and then there was a gap, and in 1994 we had another major fish kill. But from 1994 we have hardly had any fish kills in the recent years. I think it is a tribute to the fact that the affected people were willing to get organized themselves and play the primary role in the struggle.
Encouraged by scientific findings, the SPS filed legal cases.
Well, all the factory people said was that you would go to the court. So the first step they took was to file a petition under Criminal Procedure Code 133 before the Assistant Commissioner in Haveri. Because there was a very landmark decision of the Supreme Court by Justice Krishna Iyer that CRPC 133 is a powerful weapon that ordinary citizens can use against nuisances like pollution.
The basic raw material used by the rayon factory was the bark of the eucalyptus tree. Pounded into pulp, it contained substances used in the making of the synthetic fiber.
The government of Karnataka and the Harihar Polyfiber had signed an agreement on November 14, 1984. And this agreement made the government of Karnataka lease 75,000 acres of forest lands in 4 districts for growing eucalyptus. And that eucalyptus was to be used as a captive raw material for the factory. When we were involved in the think of KPL, one of the things we found was that the national forest policy that was in operation at that time resembled very much 1894 imperial forest policy, which was basically the British policy, which placed the industrial and commercial needs ahead of the people's needs. So there was a great need for change. So this particular struggle provided us wonderful contacts all across the country, so that we were able to be part of this larger effort to bring about a change in the national forest policy.
KPL विरुद्ध आंदोलन हे तर मला असं वाटतं की पर्यावरण
I regard the struggle against KPL as one of the pioneering environmental agitations in India. The cabinet had already given its approval to the proposal. The land had already been awarded and had changed hands. The required plantation had already been completed in several places. To oppose government decision at such a point and successfully agitate for reconsideration was truly a unique achievement. The media proved a very important instrument. The extensive documentation of the pollution prepared by the SPS and its appeals to sympathetic members of the academia and bureaucracy was another great achievement. Writ petitions were filed and brought a stay order on the company's disputed operations. A sustained struggle was thus continued.
It is very interesting because, you see, it cuts across more than 200 kilometers of the area. and some of it is the thick evergreen forests right in the heart of Western Ghats, like in Chikmagalur, Baba Budangiri, Mudigere, where the lands were given for this, to the places which are east of the Western Ghats and which come less rainfall areas. So it is a broad range of forest lands, but one thing that was common was it is a rich, good forest land which supported from evergreen forests, so moist deciduous forests like the teak, the sandalwood and all that. The court had to decide whether these forest lands were to meet the livelihood needs of the poor or the raw material needs of the industry. On the other hand, the people at the ground level, when even the courts could not stop them bulldozing on the lands that were not given to them, had to resort to a very, I would say, important satyagraha called pluck and plant satyagraha. Plucking the eucalyptus as a symbol of exploitation and planting a utilitarian trees, taking the responsibility to green their lands and to utilize them in a responsible way. The third was to involve well-known people like Dr. Shivaram Karanth, Justice D.M. Chandrasekhar, former Chief Justice of Karnataka High Court, Mr. Kadidal Manjappa, the former Chief Minister, and Mr. S. Nijalingappa, so that we could build a larger public opinion. And the fourth was to involve well-known scientists from the Indian Institute of Science like Dr. Ramchandra Guha, Dr. Prabhu Dandavati Math, Mrs. Prabha Mahale, to do a study that we could submit to the Supreme Court.
Madhav Gadgil also was.
Yeah, Madhav Gadgil, very much.
सत्याग्रह म्हणजे आम्ही काय केलं, आधी तर त्यांना सगळे काही विनंती पत्र
We
पाठवले.
adopted several measures. First, we sent off several appeals. This was followed by a string of letters to the authorities. Everything possible. But they didn't simply respond to any query. So then we said, this is our village land, our collective property. So this should be under our control. We decided to uproot the eucalyptus trees and instead plant trees which we wanted. That's what the villagers decided. That day we took several saplings from the nursery and went to the site and began to uproot the eucalyptus trees. That's when KPL men attacked us. Some of us were even arrested and taken away in a police van.
ಇಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಗಭದ್ರಾ ಪರಿಸರ ಸಮಿತಿಯಿಂದ ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಆಮೇಲೆ ಮೊದಲ ತುಂಗಭದ್ರಾ ಪರಿಸರ
A
ಸಮಿತಿ
committee called Tungabhadra Parisara Samiti was formed, which invited Jyotibai Desai to organize NVDA camps.
ಆಮೇಲೆ ಈ ಸಂಸ್ಥಾದ ಪರವಾಗಿ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಜ್ಯೋತಿಬಾಯಿ ಮತ್ತು ಮಾಲಿನಿತಾಯಿ ದೇಸಾಯಿ ಅವರು ಅಂತ ಇದ್ರಲ್ರಿ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಒಂದು ಭೇಟಿಗಾಗಿ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದು ತುಂಗಭದ್ರಾ ಪರಿಸರ
Later we took a foot march into 4 affected villages to create awareness among the affected people.
ಒಂದು 4 ಕ್ಯಾಂಪ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಮೆಡ್ಲೇರಿ, ಹರಣಗಿರಿ, ಐರಣಿ, ಹರಬಿಯೊಳಗೆ
ಆಕಳ ಸಂಕಟ ಅರಿಯದಾಯ್ತು, ಮಕ್ಕಳ ನಲಿವು ಕಾಣದಾಯ್ತು.
ಹಸಿರೇ ಹಸಿರೇ ರಾಮದ ಭೂಮಿ ರಾಮದ ಭೂಮಿ ಏನೇ ಬರಲಿ ಏನೇ ಬರಲಿ ಕಿತ್ತಿಕೋ ಹಚ್ಚಿಕೋ ಕಿತ್ತಿಕೋ ಹಚ್ಚಿಕೋ 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 ಹಚ್ಚಿಕೋ.
The last thing which we had to resort to, which was very, very important, because when the Supreme Court, without realizing the gravity of the situation at the ground level, was modifying the stay order and giving them some lands, we felt that that was time for decisive political action. So that is when we made an election campaign in 1989, then mobilized 72 legislatures, cutting across all party lines, both in the assembly and in the council, who took the side of the people and brought pressure on the government. So as a result, in 1991 October, the cabinet of government of Karnataka decided to close down KPL. But one last and decisive factor that led to this cabinet decision was a mammoth cycle jatha from various districts of Karnataka to Bangalore to bring the final decisive pressure on the government. It is from our analysis of these problems, that we recognize two important points. One is that there are indeed good laws, like the pollution laws, to protect the environment, and the industries were not following them. So the only way we could do was to go to the court and to enforce those laws. And by that time, fortunately, there was this public interest litigation which was accepted as an instrument for the poor to take their problems to the court. In the early 80s, when we were involved in this, there was a new trend developing towards the public interest litigation. And there was a heightened awareness among some of the judges like Justice Krishna Iyer, Justice Bhagavati. So you may not believe it, to fight the government of Karnataka against KPL, we were able to get 15,000 rupees grant from the government of India in the Ministry of Law, Justice and Company Affairs called Committee for Implementing Legal Aid Schemes. Even we got some follow-up amounts totally amounting to 65,000 rupees from them. Now, as far as the high fees of the lawyers are concerned, there was an increased awareness that there is a lopsided development that is hurting the poor. So the well-known famous lawyers gave their time free of cost as their contribution towards the society for this. Thanks to some of the judges like Justice Bhagavati and some of the very good lawyers like Justice Poti and so on, we learned this whole art of legal activism in several ways. One, for example, we could use the right to life article, which is the Article 21, which was expanded as not only right to life, meaning right to livelihood, right to a dignified life. That was very helpful for us, because for this KPL case, even though we had the laws like Forest Conservation Act, but our major were the fundamental rights of right to life, right to equality, and also some directive principles of policy which the state would have followed and had not followed, like Article 39, common good. So several of the government officers were sympathetic to our cause. For example, in the KPL case, in the Supreme Court of India, it is none other than Mr. T.N. Sheshan, then Secretary, Ministry of Environment and Forest, not only came to our support by writing to the state governments that the forest lands should not be leased for joint sector companies or for industrial plantations, but filed an affidavit in favor of us in the Supreme Court of India. Similarly, some senior government officials of Government of Karnataka were very much supportive of it, and they created a situation and documents within the government which were conducive for the cause of the poor. And this was largely because we started with rural development work. We had gained the trust and confidence of many government officers.
There are many lessons of this movement. It was built around extensive scientific documentation. It used media to generate propaganda. It appealed for justice in the court of law. But most important, it was transformed into an active people's movement. Now I return to Karnataka after a decade and take stock. Nalvagal shows some definite signs of improvement, but the air in the factory vicinity still remains fairly polluted, causing distress to nearby residents. A member of the SPS is now included in the Pollution Control Board, a token of its achievement. Yet, sadly, the pollution has still not been fully brought under control. Much remains to be done.
ಒಂದು 25%